Brian sounded genuinely shocked. That's right. I left a memo saying I wanted a divorce, remember? I placed it on the table along with the divorce application. I explained, my tone matter of fact. I could hear the sound of him rushing around on the other end of the line. Before long, Brian's high-pitched voice rang out in disbelief. What the hell is this? It's exactly what it looks like. I've had enough of you only caring about money. I stated bluntly. I'm not. It's not like that. Brian stammered, trying to make excuses. However, he was mumbling and I couldn't quite make out his words. What? You can't say it clearly because you're feeling guilty? I pressed, my patience wearing thin. No. What about you, huh? He retorted, his voice growing defensive. What about me? I shot back, my brows furrowing. Brian's breathing grew heavier as he continued accusingly. You're saying all this, but you actually went to your lover's place, didn't you? Huh? What are you talking about? I asked incredulously. It has to be true. You suddenly left the house, and normally there's nowhere else for you to go. Brian's voice rose in anger. I sighed heavily before responding. Sorry to disappoint, but I'm actually at a short-term apartment rental right now. I can't believe this. When you came here, you quit your job, so you shouldn't have any money. He exclaimed in disbelief. I was helping out at Joseph's cake shop. I countered, my frustration mounting. Both Brian and Megan were well aware that I had been assisting at Joseph's cake shop. In fact, it felt more like they had dumped the responsibility on me. Moreover, Megan had even made me take care of Joseph's nursing needs. What? Were you getting an allowance from Dad or something? Brian asked snidely. That was you, not me. I nearly blurted out those words in a burst of sarcasm. But now was not the time for such quips. I took a deep breath before continuing. I was hired as an employee there. What did you say? You've got to be kidding me. Brian scoffed, his tone dripping with skepticism. It's not a joke. Joseph was kind enough to look out for me. I asserted, my voice growing firm. Joseph had mentioned how he couldn't bear to burden his son's wife on top of being neglected by his own wife and biological son. In any case, Brian should have been able to understand that I had my own money now. Brian seemed to have lost his ability to persuade me the moment he realized I had my own money. As if to add insult to injury, I spoke with increased intensity. Anyway, I want to divorce you, Brian. Are you going to sign the divorce papers or not? Which is it? No, this whole divorce thing. He trailed off, his resistance weakening. I'm not going to listen to anything you have to say unless you agree to sign the divorce papers. I declared firmly, leaving no room for argument. Brian let out a frustrated sigh before muttering something under his breath. Then, he raised his voice louder than before. Fine. I'll give you the divorce. I just recorded you saying that. I informed him, a hint of triumph in my tone. I'll sign the damn divorce papers, so just come back home. We can't move forward with the inheritance discussions without you here. Brian finally blurted out his true intentions. However, there was one thing Brian had failed to realize. By saying that, he had inadvertently revealed the existence of a will from Joseph addressed to me. I'll say it again, but I'm not Joseph's biological daughter. Therefore, I'm not an heir to his estate. In other words, if the only purpose was to discuss the inheritance, there was absolutely no need for me to be present. Rather, the fact that they couldn't proceed without me implied that I was somehow involved in the inheritance process. He really is an idiot. I let out a quiet sigh. In any case, I had obtained proof that he would agree to the divorce. Moreover, Brian had no idea what consequences he would face. At best, he would come to regret his own words. A slight smile played on my lips at the thought. The following day, I visited my in-laws' house to retrieve the divorce application. Inside, I found Megan, Brian, and an unfamiliar man in a suit. According to Brian, the man was a lawyer. Apparently, they had called him over to discuss the inheritance matters. "If we're going to talk about the divorce, this is perfect timing," Brian remarked, a smug expression on his face. I had intended to hire my own lawyer. But in a way, this worked out conveniently. "Well then, would you mind handling my divorce case as well, while you're at it?" I asked the lawyer, my tone polite but firm. "Yes, that won't be a problem." The lawyer nodded with a smile. And so, the discussion about Joseph's inheritance began. Joseph's estate consisted of cash, securities, a house, and land. However, it seemed that Megan and Brian were the only heirs. If that were the case, there would be no need for further discussion. Normally, that would be true, but Megan and Brian had been entrusted with a will from Joseph addressed to me. That matter was likely the reason they had called the lawyer. Did they really want to pretend that the will meant for me didn't exist? I had my doubts, but the lawyer proceeded with the conversation matter-of-factly without saying a word. "So, I understand that you have a will in your possession," he prompted, his gaze expectant. "Ah, yes. Here it is," Brian replied, placing 2 envelopes on the table. One had Megan's name on it, and the other had Brian's. The will addressed to me, which they had mentioned in that earlier conversation, was nowhere to be seen. It was to be expected, but I couldn't help feeling bitterly frustrated. "Have you seen the contents?" the lawyer inquired, turning the envelopes over in his hands. "Well, the seals weren't intact, so..." Brian trailed off, his expression slightly guilty. "I see. Let me verify the contents then," the lawyer stated, proceeding to open the envelope addressed to Megan first. Inside was a single slip of paper. "To you, I bequeath the house and land," it read, without specifying to whom it was addressed. However, Joseph's signature was clearly present. Similarly, the envelope addressed to Brian contained the same type of note. This one mentioned leaving the cash and securities to him, and it also bore Joseph's signature. "Oh, there's one more sheet here," the lawyer remarked, noticing an additional document. It stated the following: "Entrusting the cake shop to..." He read aloud, his brow furrowing slightly. "Yes. My father ran a cake shop," Brian explained, his tone casual. "So, you will be inheriting the shop." "I see. Since there are also securities involved, that should work out nicely," the lawyer commented, nodding in understanding. The lawyer was taking notes while talking. At that moment, Brian shot me a nasty look. Oh, how could he be so clueless? I had overheard their conversation. So I knew that this will was originally intended for me. But Brian didn't know I had heard them, so he just had to sit tight. If he did anything unnecessary, he would only make me suspicious. He couldn't hide his feeling of triumph. I sighed quietly to myself. For now, I pretended not to know anything and kept the conversation going. In the end, the inheritance was divided as per the will, and both of them inherited all of Joseph's assets. Also, Brian seemed quite inflated with pride because he got the inheritance as he had hoped. He easily agreed to the alimony I proposed for the divorce. Furthermore, he signed the divorce papers right there. Here, is this good enough? Yes, it is. After the lawyer confirmed everything, I nodded deeply. Then, after the lawyer left, I said goodbye to Megan and Brian. Well, thank you for everything all these years. Well, we only lived together for about a year, but the marriage lasted a long time, didn't it? Megan said with a nasty smile. She was probably very happy to finally kick me out. Yes, over 10 years. So, what are you going to do now? Yes, I'll continue working. I have a lot to do. As soon as I said that, Megan looked surprised. Then, she laughed and said to me, "Didn't you hear? Brian inherited the sweets shop." Yes, I know. What do you mean, yes, I know? Are you planning to keep working there even after the divorce? Isn't that a bit shameless? Megan sneered. I replied firmly, "It's okay. My job isn't there." What? Not there? Joseph also ran a confectionery company. Megan and Brian were surprised by my words. Actually, Joseph had run 2 businesses. One was the old sweets shop that Megan and Brian knew. And the other was a confectionery company, a factory that produced sweets. It had a big factory in the area with a considerable number of employees. Moreover, recently, Joseph had been focusing on the confectionery company, and David was mainly running the sweets shop. I was hired by the confectionery company. So, even if Brian inherited the sweets shop, it didn't matter to me. When I told them this, Brian's face turned red, and he started shouting. What the hell? That's mine too. Sorry, but it's not. Why not? Because I got the shares of the confectionery company. It was a little before Joseph passed away. He asked me to do something. That was to manage his confectionery company. A few years ago, Joseph considered mechanizing the sweets shop. He thought about introducing some machines into the production process and keeping the shop running as it was. But David advised him that if he was going to partially mechanize, it would be better to develop new products that could be fully machine-produced. So, Joseph started another confectionery company. He separated the machine-producible products from the others, creating different products for the confectionery company and the shop. This strategy turned out to be a huge hit. The confectionery company grew rapidly. Meanwhile, Joseph also focused on developing collaboration products, drawing attention to the traditional sweets shop. As a result, Joseph's businesses became highly regarded in the local community. But you two didn't care at all. That's why Joseph left it to me. Why you? Megan started to get red-faced with anger. If you had visited Joseph in the hospital, maybe you would have left the company to you. Seeing Megan biting her lip in frustration made me smile a little. This was Joseph's revenge. As I thought about that, Brian suddenly approached me. Hey, Nicole. Let's get back together. What? Why? Dad collaborated with the sweets shop, didn't he? So, we should work together as a couple again. It would be better for us to cooperate as a married couple. Joseph would have wanted that too. Brian rambled on like that. But it was far too convenient now. No way. The divorce is settled. There's no going back. But, Dad, oh, wait, look at this. Look at this. Brian grabbed the will from earlier. Then, showing it to me, he continued. This will that says to leave the sweets shop to you was actually meant for you. I never expected him to confess to forging the will himself. I was amazed at how pathetic Brian looked. When I couldn't say anything, Brian spoke up. See? It's a good deal, Nicole. I'll make you an executive, no, the president of the sweets shop. Do you even understand what you're saying? Forging a will is a crime. In this case, is it forgery or alteration? I'm not sure what specific crime it falls under. But just hiding a will is a crime in itself. In any case, what Megan and Brian did is illegal. Megan seemed to understand this and was just silently troubled on her own. On the other hand, Brian didn't care at all. He desperately tried to convince me that he wasn't in the wrong.
I didn't exactly fake it. The will didn't have a name written on it.
Then it's not clear if it was meant for me either.
No, it was in an envelope with your name on it, and
Brian tear up that envelope, so I believe his actions count as destroying the will. Even for that alone, Brian should be disqualified from inheritance. At least that's what I think. But explaining this to Brian wouldn't make him understand. So, I decided to explain it in a way he could grasp. I pulled out a copy of a certain document from my bag. Placing it in front of Brian and Megan, I declared, "This is a copy of Joseph's real will."
What? The real will?
Actually, Joseph had entrusted his will to me. It's a formal document, complete with dates and signatures. And it has the names properly addressed. However, as long as there are no contradictions with the newer will, the older one can still be valid. The only contradiction with the will I have is about the sweets shop. In my will, it's written like this: "The sweets shop is bequeathed to David." I'll contact the lawyer from earlier about this.
What? Then why did Dad leave this one?
Brian clutched the supposed will intended for me. I sighed and explained the truth to him. That's not the sweets shop, but our company. If Brian had visited Joseph in the hospital, Joseph would have told him the truth. He would know that Joseph owned both the sweets shop and the confectionery company and was now focusing on the confectionery company. If he understood that, he could have figured out whether he was to be entrusted with the sweets shop or our company. He could have known what Joseph wanted to ask of him and could have advised Joseph right there. But in the end, neither of them visited Joseph. Naturally, Joseph gave up on them at some point. And before he passed, he transferred the confectionery company shares to me.
Paying the taxes will be tough, but I'll do my best for Joseph. Wait a minute. So, I get nothing?
That's right, you both might be disqualified from the inheritance. I responded with a smile. I didn't mind at all. Besides, Joseph had already outlined what to do if they couldn't inherit.
Wait, does that mean we won't get the house or land either?
Megan asked, trembling. I answered with a smile.
Exactly. The house, land, and all the cash are to be donated. No way!
Megan collapsed in tears on the spot. Brian was already in a state of shock. He couldn't say anything, just let out a dry laugh. Ignoring them, I called the lawyer. After that, I informed the lawyer about the other will. I also reported that Megan and Brian tried to take my share of the will. I don't know what happened next. I left everything to the lawyer. All I know is that David inherited the sweets shop. And from what the lawyer told me, the house, land, and cash were all donated. Apparently, Brian ran out of money and said he couldn't pay me the alimony. So, it seems certain. In the end, Brian took a part-time job to pay the alimony. When I asked about his job, he said he quit, thinking he'd get the sweets shop. I was truly astounded by him. Why did I marry such a man? I don't understand now. Anyway, I'm glad I got divorced. Megan and Brian are now working part-time at the local factory. Meanwhile, I'm busy with the confectionery company. I can't take Joseph's company lightly. I work seriously every day. But even in my busy days, there's joy.
Yeah. Today's batch is good.
I taste a freshly made cookie from the factory. A gentle sweetness spreads in my mouth. It's an old-fashioned cookie.
Joseph, I'll protect this flavor.
I thought I'd visit Joseph's grave on my next day off. Just then, the cookie bag fell off the desk. It felt like a breeze blew through the closed office.
Mom, I'm pregnant.
Stumbling over her words, my 14-year-old daughter Madeline reveals this to me. Her frail, haggard appearance makes it all too easy to imagine how much anguish and tears it took for her to utter those words. There's no trace left of the bright, energetic Madeline from before. I couldn't possibly believe what Madeline was telling me, but being handed a positive pregnancy test leaves no room for doubt. Still not fully grasping the extent of Madeline's pregnancy, I gently try to